All right, welcome everybody. I'm going to call the meeting to order. And just to get things started, I want to just give a big shout out to the snow removal team for the city and DPW. Oh my gosh. We are so grateful. I've heard such great things, such appreciatory things of their work over the last, 3 days, something like that. They've been working to exhaustion, basically, and we're so grateful for their work. So, just want to say that first. The other first thing is to review and approve the agenda, and I don't think we have any changes to the agenda. Am I wrong about that, to anybody's knowledge? I think it's as advertised. Okay, so we're going to consider the agenda approved without objection. So on to general business and appearances. So this is a time for any member of the public to address the council on some item that is otherwise not on our agenda. So, and if you have something to say, if you would say your name and where you live, and try to keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. And with Donna not here, I will keep track of time.
I'll say first. One of my rare appearances. Good evening to all. My name is Richard Shear from Loomis, near Main Street. And I just had a question about transportation policy, which is something that really isn't on the agenda.
Could you get up right on the microphone?
Sure. Is the mic on? Okay, good. And I'll speak a little louder, Jack, anyway. I'm here to speak to transportation policy, which isn't on the agenda, hasn't been on the agenda for a while. And basically, I'm not questioning the 40,000 that's embedded in the budgets at all. I'm not, that is in the budget. What I'd like a better understanding as Green Mountain Transit is about to release, Donna, I'm right, you're on the Transportation Committee, that Green Mountain Transit will make public soon their planning that they've been working on for a long while.
That's correct, but they're also going to be making some reductions.
Ooh, okay, and I know there'll be a public meeting on that sometime in February, I believe. What I'm wondering is the process of the city's 40,000 on transportation. Whether this is a no-bid contract to Green Mountain Transit, or whether this is 40,000 that's going to be allocated for transporting people around our town. And basically, will that go out in the form of an RFP? And if Green Mountain Transit has the most effective way of doing it, certainly they would continue with it. But if there are other alternative models, that's the first part of the question. And the second is, how much connection the schools have had with the city council and their transportation planning, since the schools are planning to allocate $120,000 for the transportation of 150 students. So if I could just have a couple of minutes on when the city is planning to discuss unified transportation. Boy, that was a lot in 2 minutes.
Yeah, fair enough. Oh, don't forget to say your name and where you are from.
Did he?
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. I totally missed it. I think I was getting my
Right
phone.
by
That's
you.
what happened. No, that's
You
great.
heard it enough.
Yeah, no worries. Great question. I think that's something that we could absolutely take up at a future meeting. I think it's probably worth talking about. So let's, I can't tell you exactly when that would be right now, but let's be in touch about when we might have a more robust conversation about that. Yes?
I would just like to make sure you realize that 40,000 doesn't pay for it all. That's
Right.
a subsidy to state and federal dollars.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I'd like to know where the state is involved in this. So Donna, would you be the point person on council on that issue?
Sure.
Notice
Not
how
to-
I delegate Donna into this?
But not
That's
to
all
put
I
you on
have
the
to
spot.
say. Thank you so
Okay.
very much. I'll get home on a rainy night.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Dan Dickerson, Montpelier resident. This relates to bike path access. I live on Charles Street, which I don't know if anybody's familiar, but it basically flows from the sort of the college area down to Barry. I often find myself walking down to access the bike path, so I cut through that parking lot where the new apartment is, and access it across the railroad tracks, or I go to the co-op. And this sort of stems from me walking down a few days ago after the big snowstorm, so obviously this is sort of a one-off, well, not a one-off occurrence, but a rare occurrence. And I found a giant mountain of snow blocking the path or the desire line, as you would call it, to the bike path and to the co-op. And I guess I just wanted to, suggest or wonder if there's a way that the city might, because there are a lot of people that actually walk down Charles and access the bike path and the co-op through that little corridor. And I'm wondering if there's a way for the city to potentially negotiate with the railroad and maybe the property owner to get like a formal pathway as opposed to this sort of informal dirt track that currently flows there. I think there's enough traffic to warrant it, and I think given that the bike path is going to be extended, much further out, I think there might be a much greater desire of people to walk down Charles or come from Barry and access the bike path through that means. So just as a suggestion, it would be nice to have a formal pathway to access the path and the co-op. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great idea. We can certainly talk more about that. Ashley?
Should council bring up business that's not on the agenda?
Yeah.
So I had sent an email earlier, but I've been following what the state is doing in terms of federal workers who are out of work and not getting paid. And I don't know what authority the city has or anything like that, but I know that I think there's about 1,500 federal employees that live in Vermont, 1,600 maybe, and I want to make sure that it's something that's on our radar. If tax bills are coming due, any of those things, we have no idea when the federal government is going to reopen, and our president just approximately 8 minutes ago indicated that grocery stores will just give you credit to buy food sort of whenever you want it. So that's not a practical reality for a lot of folks who are living paycheck to like a few days before next paycheck. And so I want the city to sort of start thinking about ways that we can be a little bit flexible on things that we wouldn't ordinarily be, but I think it's sort of extraordinary circumstances. And
I'm certainly interested in that. Do you want to follow up with thinking about options?
So I just add, Ashley had asked an email about this, and I'm so sorry to get back to you. We've been
no, that's fine.
trying to figure out what the legal
You
options
have
are.
a life bill? You do other things?
Nope. You say jump, I say how high. No, so we're trying to find out what our legal choices are. I mean, I think obviously it would be the question of whether we could waive interest and penalties on late taxes, those kind of things. So I don't know what flexibility we have in the law.
Thanks for putting it on the radar. Anyone else? Donna?
There seems to be a strong echo. I don't know if I'm the only one who hears it.
There is.
Is there anything that can be done about it?
Reverb.
Are we that lit already?
Yeah.
It's just my ears.
I guess I don't mind it because it tells me that you all can hear, which I
Okay.
like knowing,
I
but
just won't touch my ears.
so, yeah, oh, right, there you go. Yeah, fair enough. Whatever works. Okay, anyone else? Okay. All right, so on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion regarding the consent agenda?
I move the consent agenda.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we have some appointments to make. There are a number of appointments where there was one person applying for one position, or two people applying for three positions, something like that. So we could just make all those appointments together at first, or we can hear from everybody and then go into executive session and then come back and announce them all. What's your preference?
Let's do the second one.
Okay, so we'll hear from everybody, go into executive session, and then come back and make all the appointments. Okay, great. So there are appointments to be made to the Social and Economic Justice Committee, Investment Committee, Tree Board, and Solid Waste Management Committee. So we don't have to necessarily go in order unless, well, let's go in order. How about that? Structure is good. I'm trying to be more structured here. Okay, so let's start with if there's anyone here from the Social and Economic Justice or applying to that committee. If you would come on up and introduce yourself and tell us about your interest in that committee.
I am Shana Casper on 21 Kent Street. I just moved there last year, and I think I'm mostly interested just to get to know more about what's happening in Montpelier and to learn more about how we can make it a more inclusive place. I put a lot more in my application, but that's the short of it.
Okay.
Great.
Any questions?
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I think Janelle Perry sent us an email saying that she would not be able to be here. The investment committee, we had Lou Ciceri apply, but he also sent us an email saying that he would not be here. And for the tree board appointment, is James Finley Shiras here? No? Okay. And for the solid waste management committee, I know that there are a number of people interested, and if you would introduce yourself and tell us about your interest in this committee.
Hello, I'm Donna Barlow Casey.
Pull that down to your mouth.
All right, thank you. I'm is this better? I'm Donna Barlow Casey. I have spent a fair amount of time in public service over 3 decades. I have not worked in solid waste directly in about 6 years, but I originally moved here in 1995 to be the executive director of the Central Vermont Solid Waste Management District. I authored the first zero waste plan east of the Mississippi for sustainable materials management, advocated for the state's universal recycling law, am an avid composter, remain a consultant on a national level to EcoCycle out of Boulder, Colorado on sustainable materials management. And I find myself as the current executive director for the Natural Resources Board Act 250, which for the first time in my life, I don't have to work night meetings. I'm going day long, but so I have this opportunity to take and throw my hat in the ring to do something I'm passionate about for the city of Montpelier. I'm no longer a resident, but I spent over 20 years living here. I have worked on an interim basis for the city of Montpelier a few years ago. I just love the city as our capital city, and would feel very privileged if you would consider my candidacy for the committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ellen Cheney. I represent Montpelier on the Central Vermont Solid Waste Management District Board. It's an elected position. This body elected me. Beyond that, I am incredibly passionate about garbage, as some of you know. I know a lot about what happens to garbage and recycling and compost in Central Vermont. I'm a 16-year resident and very committed to making sure that our environment and our community is healthy and that our waste is disposed of properly.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kurt Erickson of Vine Street. I am the general manager of Vermont Compost Company. I also do work with the Food Cycle Coalition, which is associated with Vermont Farm to Plate. Also a member of the Composting Association of Vermont. I'm a formal environmental regulator with the U.S. Coast Guard. I've been here in Montpelier for 2 years now, and just as I, I'm starting to think about, starting a family and buying a house, I just want to ensure that we're managing these materials in the best way possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm back up, Shana Casper, Kent Street. I work with Toxics Action Center. We work side by side with community groups that are fighting pollution threats in their neighborhoods, and we work with a number of different community groups around New England that are fighting landfills and incinerators in their communities. And so every day I see kind of how this how our waste system harms those who are facing the brunt of it. And so as part of our work, we're also moving towards zero waste, universal recycling, and so I've just been part of a lot of these conversations at the state level, and then been helping community groups at the local level. And so I'm really excited to see if I can help my own community move towards universal recycling and zero waste, to move away from our polluting landfills. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so I think that is everyone. Were there any questions for anybody? Okay, so do we have a motion to go into executive session?
I would move that we go into executive session pursuant to 1 VSA section 3134, some 31 blank, to discuss the appointments of people to city commissions.
Great. Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we will be right back. Did Rosie go to the bathroom? Did Rosie go to the bathroom?
Wait, show you sign, so now we can get into it.
We lost Rosie. Oh, okay, well, I guess we should move forward. Okay, do we have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Oh, did anybody second that?
I tried to, but you were too quick.
Oh, okay, well, sorry.
Second.
Good, thank you. Right, okay.
Find oil machine.
Now I have a motion.
Yep, great.
I move that we appoint James Finley Sherris to the Tree Board, Lou Cecere to the Investment Committee, Shayna Casper and Janelle Perry to the Social Justice Committee, and Ellen Cheney to the Solid Waste Management Committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I just want to make a note about the Solid Waste Committee. I am very likely to be the one that's going to be convening that group, and to all of you who applied, I want you all there. It is a public meeting, and we appointed one person because this is jointly held with Barry, and they appointed one person, so we felt there needed to be some equity there. But I want your brains there. So I have your email addresses, and I'll let you all know when that's happening. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So there is a proposal regarding the layout of the farmers market for the summer. Is there somebody coming to talk to us about that?
I think they're on the way.
Okay, fantastic.
They're still
Yeah, do you need more chairs? We can pull more over. Welcome. So, would you mind just going around and introducing yourselves?
Sure. I'm Hannah Blackmer. I am the new president for the farmers market.
You need the mics distributed on the table. Little ones on the table.
Oh, okay. Hannah Blackmer, president for the farmers market.
Amy McCrullis, Montpelier resident and community board member on the Farmers Market Board.
I'm Jess Turner. I own Capital Kitchen on State Street.
My name's Eric Bigglestone. I'm owner of Capital Stationers on Main.
Bob Watson, Capitol Grounds.
I'm Karen Wiseman. I'm the former president of the Farmers Market, and I am the liaison to the board for the market.
And I'm Dan Groberg, executive director of Montpelier Live.
Well, welcome.
I think I'll go ahead and present. So we're here asking for the council to allow us to move on to State Street and the Heaney lot for the duration of the outdoor 2019 farmers market. Last year we had some challenges, and we sort of looked at them as opportunities, and we're actually pretty grateful for what happened because we think out the other end here, you can see everybody's at the table, and we're really grateful for that. And I think that through all of our coordination and our discussions that we came up with a layout that's going to really work for everybody and work for our customers and the town and the city. So we stepped back last year and we worked with the DBA and Montpelier Alive and the city, and we came up with a better layout. The objectives of our layout, first and foremost, need to make sure we have a safe loading and unloading for the farmers. We need an open and flowing layout that really is a customer-centric experience. We need to maximize the vendors that we can have at our farmers market for our financial sustainability. And we also really want to integrate with all of the businesses and all of the organizations that make Montpelier what it can be. You know, we'll put this right out on the table. At this point in time, we really have no place to go. We did work with state officials and different organizations to assess the possibility of moving to the State House lawn, which seems to be much more of a challenge than we thought. So we've got a layout that we feel like is agreeable to everyone, and really the objective is to make Saturday mornings a destination in Montpelier for all the community members and surrounding community members. Our current open issues are additional trash removal on Saturday mornings, which we've worked with the city, and most of these are all going to be addressed already. Barriers. Last year we needed to purchase some pretty expensive barriers to shut down the street, and that was a bit of a challenge for us. We'll be using our trucks, and that will also provide extra safety so that nothing like has happened in other places may happen here. Bathrooms are still an open issue. We've heard pretty clearly from the businesses that it's something we need to address. We have some ideas, and we're still working with Sue in the city, and we're pretty confident that we can solve those, but that is definitely a concern for all of us. Parking, everybody has always concerned about parking. This first year, we're going to all work together with a lot of advertising and pointing people to different places that they can park in the city. In future years, we're going to look towards the city council to potentially allow free parking in the new parking garage for Saturday mornings. We would ask that there are no permanent vendors allowed between Main Street and Elm Street during farmers market times. And we also are still looking for a location for our trailer and some of our things. That's one of the unresolved issues, but there are some ideas, and we're working with the city. We've already got some regular meetings scheduled with Montpelier Live and the Downtown Business Association to keep not only just communication to work through any issues, but also to really create reasons for people to come downtown and visit on Saturday mornings. Yeah, and I just want to hand it over to Hannah to say a couple last things.
So the farmers market has a 40-year or so tradition downtown Montpelier, and it's such a rich agricultural community that we're supporting in a rich agricultural state. And we really look forward to working with Montpelier as a collective to continue those traditions and to really support those traditions and to continue to foster that leading edge that our state has in the agricultural community nationally, really. So we look at it as a really fantastic opportunity for so many people to be involved with.
Great. Well, I'm so thrilled that you all come together and have a plan that you're supporting. It's wonderful. So if there's any questions from the council, now's the time, and we can keep going. Yeah.
I just have one clarifying question. I noticed a note on here about the on-street vendors dropping from 30 to 35 from 50. That's not total vendors, right? Those other vendors will still be there. They're just in the Heaney lot area, right? So we're same size market, just broken up into two areas.
Yeah, with the Heaney lot, it actually allows us to grow in vendors, which is a requirement for our financial stability. We did drop down on State Street for a number of different reasons. It opens up the flow. It decongests some of the vendors right around where a fair amount of businesses are. And at the same time, it allows us also to keep the market contiguous, which was a challenge with our members as well. So overall, we'll be able to grow the market up towards about 75 vendors of recap.
Awesome.
Okay, so any other questions? So I think we need a motion regarding the layout. Is there any public comment?
I'll just say
Yeah,
that
go
I
ahead.
was one of the people who stood up here last spring and took issue with the layout at the time, but this layout, it seems so mindful of all the concerns that we brought up. I mean, literally every concern that we brought up seems to be addressed in the new layout. So I know I'll speak for myself, and a lot of State Street businesses are really looking forward to this collaboration and moving forward in a really positive, exciting way with the market.
Donna.
And I'd like to echo that as well. seemed like before it was not going anywhere. I give credit to the farmers market for holding out and coming back and working together with the merchants, and I think it's a good situation. We do not want to lose the farmers market in Montpelier. It's part of our identity, and we welcome them to State Street, and we definitely want to keep them here in town.
Great. Super. Donna?
I just wanted to make a motion that we accept the layout as presented. Do I have to refer to this map?
No, as presented, I think works,
Okay.
right?
So the farmer's market, do you need dates?
During the normal farmers market season.
Okay.
Do we need to specifically mention closing State Street or do anything in our motion about that?
I would imagine we'd probably take that up separately along with
Yeah,
other
we'd have to do a
street
we'll do the
closure.
official street closure
we'll
when
do
we
that later.
close.
So, but this was just about the layout, I
But
think, so.
Implied that we will approve a street closure.
Yeah.
for this.
Right, right.
Much improved.
Keep it in mind.
We didn't tell you that part, right?
Okay, so there was a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments?
I just
Okay.
have a comment. I think that this is too small a town to have these two important segments of the community fighting with each other, and so I'm glad you were able to do this.
Great.
I just want to add on that comment, one thing that got me, I guess, excited and I'm looking forward to this is I don't think we're looking at putting the farmer's market on State Street. We're looking at doing something different with State Street on Saturdays and incorporating the farmer's market with it. I think it has great potential. And, we'll see what happens. We're all very excited for it.
Great. It's very exciting.
As a Montpelier resident, I'm really excited about it.
Okay, any further comments, questions? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, great. Thank you for all of your hard work to make this happen. Thank you. Okay, and now we have a presentation from the Washington County State's Attorney, Roy Tebow, who I think I saw here.
I also should disclose I am employed as a deputy state's attorney in the Washington County State's Attorney's Office, so I'm not going to ask any questions or anything like that, and I just want everybody who's watching to know that as well.
Great. Welcome.
Long time no see.
Basically, yes.
You might have to skip a handout, Ashley.
Oh, I think we had a staff meeting the other day.
All right, well, good evening, and thank you very much for taking time to have me here this evening. It's exciting to be in front of the City Council, and the work you do here is really important because all work in government is important these days. So what I really wanted to highlight to you tonight are what you're being handed out is actually a 2-year operating plan for my office. It's not something that has been done in the past, and as many of you know, I walked into this job sort of unexpectedly, and the past year has been filling out a different term. So I won election in November, and I have a 4-year term ahead.
Just pull this.
So in any event, it's a great opportunity to have 4 years ahead to plan. The past year has been a lot of mending fences and resolving issues. Ashley, I'm sure, has probably vented to you about that in private. But looking ahead, I think it's incredibly important that we recognize that Washington County, including Montpelier, has a lot of justices in the criminal challenge end. These justice challenges often overlap with things we're well versed in: economic insecurity, poverty, addiction. So rather than just sit back and respond and react to things as we often do in the criminal justice system, I thought it was appropriate that my team and I get together and think about what we really want to do and what we want to accomplish and focus on in the next 2 years. I think it goes without saying that the drug epidemic in central Vermont, which also touches Montpelier to a large extent, perhaps maybe not even as much as people recognize, but it is there. It's important to recognize that the drug epidemic is a priority. I can say, unfortunately, within the last 30 days in Washington County, there have been 4 fatal overdose events. What's also troubling is that in 3 of those 4 cases, these are individuals who had already received and had been part of medically assisted treatment. What this means for us, I'm getting a little off script here, but I think it's important to note this. We cannot simply silo the public health response from the criminal justice response. Oftentimes, the criminal justice system becomes an opportunity of last resort to save somebody or put them on the right path. Internal in this document, I lay out some of our 4 prongs, but they really of what our lines of effort are to do a better job of justice and public safety in central Vermont and specifically Washington County. When we look at addiction, there's 2 important things to consider its response. There's an enforcement end, and then there's a recovery end. Those 2 can work well together, and one of the key things that we would like to do from our standpoint of using the justice system is to reduce the overall demand for drugs in Washington County and central Vermont. That's really a lot easier said than actually done, as you can imagine. But a part of that is making sure that we strike when the iron is hot, that there's a rapid response when someone is dealing with addiction or crisis. That means robust utilization of the Tamarack program, which is a pretrial diversion program that includes a contract for seeking substance abuse and some case management. And then when we get to more intense cases, utilizing the Washington County Adult Treatment Court. Another effort I'm excited to announce with you we're working on with the team is extending that into the juvenile division as well, so that people who are qualified to be treated as youthful offender, that is our 18 to 22-year-old cohort group, can access that service, of course in that setting, confidential as opposed to the adult court, which is held in open session. All this being said, there's a lot of exciting things that we're working on. What I've handed you includes, the first slide is some trends. One thing I want to point out is that we had last year 351 more cases filed in adult criminal court than we did the year before. That's out of a little over, somewhere over 1,700 total. Percentage-wise, that's a pretty massive increase. That, to this point, has been buffered without any increase in staffing or resources in my office. It's nothing short of a Herculean effort of both our partners in law enforcement and the deputies there that I think they've done well, and we've continued to meet the needs in the justice system. There are some alarming trends there. We have an increase in domestic violence offenses. We have a significant increase in violations of conditions of release, likely partially attributed to some bail reform, where bail is being used less often, and we're relying on those conditions of release. I will note, I don't have specific stats from Montpelier, but I would say anecdotally there was an increase in the number of VCRs that officers had to respond to and file. And Berry City was able to attribute most of their case increase to violations of conditions of release, while their felony and violent crime rate actually decreased. So there are some things to consider. We also dealt with, as an office, the increase of availability of youthful offender, which is a program that I'm proud to say our office is a statewide leader in. Out of, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of about 133 total filings in the state, 44 of those youthful offender petitions were in Washington County. Our office is supporting all but 11 of those dockets for treatment as youthful offender. That pertains to 6 individuals. You may ask, why is the state's attorney opposed to some youthful offender cases? Well, these are violent cases that affect people and have real victims. They're attempted murders, they're sexual assaults, some on campuses, some in schools, some in the community. And also one case I'll highlight, which is a Montpelier case. There's a case that we have filed an objection to that involves the sale and distribution of heroin in Montpelier by an 18 to 22-year-old. My objection in that matter is premised on the fact that that is distribution that's occurring to youth in this community and youth in central Vermont. The response from treatment in juvenile division probably isn't appropriate for long-term supervision. So there's some legislative priorities in here mapped out, and one area I'm particularly concerned about is issues of violent crime or serious felony crime. At this point, I would not assess that the resources available through the Youthful Offender Program are adequate to meet that, and that is a real public safety challenge for law enforcement and for my office. In some respects, I don't think, not just that case, but in some ways, criminal justice reform is, in general, an incredibly important principle and a huge priority, not just for my office, but for the Attorney General's office and for many leaders statewide. But we always need to be cognizant of how those changes progress and whether the resources and supports we assume that will be there for people in that process are keeping pace. is a question that we must focus on. So that is really what I wanted to say by way of introduction. I understand all of you have different priorities and questions probably about your community in particular or some of the things we're doing, and I'd definitely like to answer some questions or assist you in understanding what our office is doing.
Questions? I have a question. This crew will know that I have a particular love for data, and so is there a place where you all have data about Washington County available, or is that the kind of thing that you would even want to publish?
So we do have some data available. It's principally things that we are either obligated to report to the executive director's office or are reporting as part of grants. For example, we do maintain data on domestic violence trends. So that's domestic violence offenses, violation of abuse prevention orders, and violations of conditions of release in those dockets. What I can tell, I can't remember the number offhand today. What I can tell you is that in 2018, we exceeded our number of filings that we had in 2017 in mid-October. And ended probably about 20 to 30 cases above where we were the year before. Now that said, the question always becomes, is more cases mean there's more crime? And the answer is always more complicated, because that can also be an indication of more reporting and more follow-through. There are times where law enforcement is called to a household. You'll see in reports or what's published in the newspaper responded to a family fight, for example. Sometimes a family fight is a nice way of saying this is a domestic where no one wanted to make a criminal complaint or report. That's not always the case. And also follow through in cases important. The number of filings is somewhat insignificant when you look at was there a successful outcome one way or the other.
Okay, fair enough. Other questions? All right. Maybe, forgive my ignorance here. I guess I do have one other question. Is it safe to assume that you are funded through the state?
We are state funded.
Okay.
So the state's attorney's office is a very odd duck when it comes to state entities or county entities. So county government doesn't really exist much beyond having a superior court assigned to a county, a sheriff's office, and then a state's attorney's office. So employees of my office are not actually considered state employees. We are considered county or municipal employees and have somewhat different sets of rules that apply, different pay scale. One positive I can report on is you'll note in there's a lineup of our future staffing. This past legislative session, 3 additional deputy state's attorney positions were authorized statewide. There have been a request for more, and a number of counties also experienced what Washington County did this past year of significant increases in case filings and volume, Franklin County being one in particular. We were lucky to be the 3rd and final office to obtain that help, and so we'll be very happy to greet a gentleman named Malachi Brennan into our office in March of 2019. So that's great news for us in terms of that, but we are a county entity.
Okay.
The final thing I'll say as well, with the absence of county government, a lot of people look for leadership in the county. Montpelier is a very strong city. Berry City is also a very strong city with robust political discourse and a city council that's very active. That's a benefit for our more populated towns, but as the chief law enforcement officer for the entire county, we have some communities that are really small and really far from law enforcement resources. One of the other areas that I hope to emphasize, and I'm happy that both the Berry Community Justice Center and Montpelier Community Justice Center do serve communities outside of their immediate area, and so we have countywide coverage of that service. But in the future, in the absence of a county administrator, it's incredibly important that we marshal our collective community resources to help people in need and assist in the justice system. So I applaud you for your work and your cognizance of both social justice and criminal justice.
Great. Thank you. Donna. Yep.
Just had a couple of questions. Thank you for the handout. Given that you just got it, the way you have it laid out makes facts jump out at you, so I appreciate that. I do want to ask about the cows on front.
Yes.
Is that to get our attention, or do you have cows in the office?
Wait, that's way better than a cat or a dog.
Well, they're all tagged. and
I
I'm
think we're going to
wondering
have an
about that.
office vote tomorrow.
So I reside in the wonderful town of Cabot, and those cows live up the road from me. They're very friendly cows. They are very photogenic cows, and I thought that it captures our kind of rural aesthetic. And certainly for someone not from here, when you think Vermont, you think maple syrup and cows.
Okay, well, likewise, you have 3 words here: fair, transparent, and responsive. What are 3 ways that things could change in your office to make it more fair, more transparent, and more responsive?
So fairness is an important concept, and you will see in there's a number of values that I've put out actually right after my appointment. I thought it was important to have sort of a turning of the page and a change in perspective of how we approach criminal justice problems. I think fairness implies a lot of things. We're looking ultimately at what's best for the community. It's not necessarily what, in every case, a victim wants. It's not necessarily always that, an offender probably doesn't want to go to jail or do, some of the things we ask them to do. What we're looking at is reducing risk in the community and arriving at outcomes that make sense and, are hopefully pro-social and are changing behavior. Usually when we have people in the criminal justice system, they're at rock bottom. Nobody wants to be sitting there on arraignment day. Nobody wants to be coming out of the back in handcuffs because of something they've done. That's an opportunity, though. It's an opportunity for some sort of positive change. We've seen people in the most dire straits of addiction really have an incredible recovery, be it through treatment court or through probation, or just the fact that this is a wake-up call that gets them to go seek help, or that gets their family engaged and realize that this isn't just a problem that they can ignore at family dinner or at gatherings. So in that sense, fairness is a evolving concept, and it depends on what you're looking at and who you're dealing with. Fair means assessing facts and making sure that we, as prosecutors, don't just think about what is popular in the newspaper or what's popular in the community. It's about doing what's right, even when that right may be really difficult to do. In terms of transparency, I try, in my sense, to be very open and communicative with community partners, stakeholders, and with constituents when they call in or are concerned. Ashley can attest, there are times where people don't like what we're doing one way or the other, and we get yelled at, or, other times people come up to us and are very happy about something in the street. So transparency, I think, is maintaining open communication and not obscuring what we're doing or why we're doing certain things. For those, we brought up youthful offender before. I have not been shy about my opinions about where the youthful offender law needs help or where we need more state resources to make some of these things work. So I think in that sense, transparency is just keeping that dialogue alive. Now, I will say as a caveat, I know the mayor likes numbers. Numbers can be difficult, and I'll be blunt. My office is not equipped to have someone sit there, collect statistics. So when we have a mandate to do it, we do it. To be that proactive is difficult because that means I'm taking an Ashley Hill or my DV prosecutor, Tracy Leibowitz, I'm taking them off of casework to sit there and collect data. And that's a luxury I have sometime, but it's a luxury that no one else really has right now. I can't remember the third word offhand.
Responsive. But you
Responsive.
sort of answered by the first 2,
Sure.
so that's okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are you getting the support and everything you need from city services? For our police department, Justice Center, me, anybody is,
Sure.
Here in Montpelier, you talked a lot about the county, but we're obviously worried about Montpelier, so we want to make sure you're getting what you need.
You had to put me on the spot with the chief sitting back there. So.
You can make him leave the room.
No, I think that from a law enforcement perspective, you have a lot to be proud of in Montpelier. You have excellent leadership. You have really dedicated professionals at both the sergeant level who are supervising and at the road level. I think a lot of departments strive to be this responsive community force, and some talk the talk. Montpelier walks the walk, and I think that that's a benefit of being a well-resourced department with a really professional staff. And by and large, I have to say, we are really, truly blessed to have incredibly responsive, fair, and transparent law enforcement in Washington County. It's not without hiccups or without issues that come up, but really fortunate. The Montpelier PD in particular really is a professional department. The quality of work is incredibly high, and I know many of you in the City Council are probably aware of a string of burglaries that took place at the end of last year and some other more high-profile crimes. Those have been investigated well. They are complex crime. Very seldom on a complex case do I ever have to call back and ask for more here, and that to me is the world, and that means that we get better outcomes and faster outcomes.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So we are up to all the town meeting day stuff. So the first thing is to set the date for the annual city meeting, town meeting day. Tuesday, March 5th, 2019, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., City Hall Auditorium. Don't think this is controversial.
I was gonna make that motion, but you just stated everything I needed to say. Do I have to restate it for the
Just say
secretary?
what, you know,
Say second.
You want me to
you
say
can
it
move,
again?
yes.
I'm looking at the
You-
recorder.
So you can just say so moved.
Okay, so moved.
Great.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. On to the budget.
So I was just gonna go quickly through.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you need to open a hearing?
Yes, I believe I do. So I'm gonna officially open the second public hearing on, budget. And Bill is gonna run
Just
through
take a
some
second.
basics and then we'll talk.
Yeah, I'm just gonna take a second for everything to fire up. Take a quick break if you want. We'll work on dimmers. For next year, we'll have dimmers maybe. Not
It's gotta be the projector.
really. Projector.
It is easier to see, Ashley, if the lights are.
It's too much, though. Can we turn like half the lights off?
No,
We
we
can-
turn these off.
I can flicker them.
Yeah. Every other slide.
All right, let's
Okay,
go for it.
this is similar to what you've seen. This is updated from your decisions based on, at the last meeting. And obviously, this is the second and final public hearing on the city's budget and our budget proposals. After this, you'll make a decision about what to place on the ballot. Again, our budget was set up to implement our strategic plan, to continue our capital plan, and to deliver responsible services. Going through the strategic plan, one of our goals was community prosperity. We've funded the Montpelier Development Corporation. We've kept our planning staff with our new zoning and master plan being developed and implementing our new TIF district. For environmental stewardship, we've kept the $5,000 for the Energy Committee. We've added one new Parks and Tree position. We have funded our stormwater projects. We've included the GMT circulator bus that was discussed earlier tonight, and considered having funding an energy planning grant to do an energy master plan. For our inclusive, equitable, and welcoming community, we've increased funding for our community fund. We've got new Arts Commission funding. We've kept our feast program at the senior center. We've increased funding for Montpelier Alive and kept our funding for our community enhancements. For sustainable infrastructure, we've increased our capital improvement and equipment plan by $25,000. We've followed our water and sewer plan. We've added a facilities and sustainability director to be added in October. And we've kept our complete streets plan with some funding. For our thoughtfully built environment, we've included again the downtown improvement district and funding for downtown projects in our plan. And of course, our big project for the year presumably would be the parking structure. For more housing, we added $50,000 to our housing trust fund, bringing it up to $110,000. And then we've implemented our TIF, which I mentioned earlier, which calls for more housing. Public health and safety, we just discussed this with the state's attorney. We've added a new police officer. We've budgeted for public events that we expect will happen. We've continued funding our flood gauges, which have been very helpful, particularly over the holidays. We had a flash jam up, and it was the gauges that caught it and allowed us to provide early notification to people that we might have some flooding conditions. So they continually prove their worth. They're also available for the public to look at on their own. We continue expanding our paramedic program as we hire new people at our fire and EMS department. And we've continued Project Safe Catch as we share the state's attorney's goal to fight the opioid crisis.
So Bill, could I ask a question about the EMT of the paramedic program?
Yes.
Is that a program whereby as we hire new staff in the fire department, we're looking to have them be certified at the paramedic level rather than just the EMT level?
That's correct. Bob's in the back. He'll correct me if I get the number wrong, but I think we have 3 now. Is he nodding? Okay. Yeah, I can't see. 3 now, 2 existing employees in training. Our long-term goal over a many-year period is, have the whole staff as paramedics, but that's a long way coming. They cost more. There's a lot of training and equipment involved and all that kind of thing. On the other hand, you can provide much greater services. You can charge more for the services. So at this point, we're doing it on an incremental basis, but once those 2 complete, there'll be 5 out of the 5, well, there's 16 counting Bob, but of the 15 that are really on the calls, it'll be a third of our staff. So that's considering a couple of years ago, we didn't have any. So we're moving. It's been an issue. For our responsive and responsible government, we are continuing our communications efforts, our employee wellness efforts. Our service levels are all maintained. We didn't have any reductions in service in this year's budget, which is great. Continuing our bridge article, our new Invisio software is working well. We have the public dashboard for people to see at any time. And we are developing, as you've heard me mention, our program Access Montpelier, which we'll hear more about later this year. And we're hoping to set aside reserve funds for a citizen survey, our strategic planning effort, and the energy planning. So in real specific numbers, the budget changes right now that council approved at the last meeting. We're increasing the capital funding by $25,000, a new police officer position, a new parks and trees position, a new facilities director position, increasing the housing trust fund, a new arts commission funding, increasing Montpelier Alive, increasing the community fund, new childcare for meetings, and the one-time funding. So otherwise, everything else was basically held at its same levels given inflation and employee costs, et cetera. Taking a look at our budget, where it comes from, about 2/3 of it is from the property taxes, the rest from various other sources. And as we look at how we spend it, this is a chart. This will be in the annual report as well, but just showing by department where our money goes. No big surprise, our big money goes to police, fire, and public works. Those are our major services, and the capital services. Capital plan, excuse me. So the money to do the projects and keep the equipment, and then the personnel to do the work. As we look at our budget, as you can see, we're over 50% personnel funded. That is how municipal government works, and divides out this way. If we look at all the different services and take a look at the average tax bill, this is a chart. It's a little hard to read up here. It will be in the annual report, but it just gives you a snapshot of what you pay for on average for an individual service. And again, it's pretty clear. Almost half goes to police, fire, and public works. So our municipal rates, for the municipal budget, the property tax rate is scheduled to go up 3.7 cents or 3.4%. For an average tax bill increase of $85. The district heat rates were recently approved and are being implemented. The water and sewer is estimated to go up 3.5% as per our capital plan, and there would be no change for our sewer benefit or CSO benefit. Taking a look overall, we just got numbers from the school department. Their budget is scheduled to go up, their residential budget will go up 4.5 cents or about 2.8%, which means overall, at the bottom and highlight, the overall tax rate will go up 8 cents or about 3% from prior year. And that shows, as you can see, this is about 108. That all totals to about $186 for the average homeowner, and this is the breakout of the sort of what portion goes for what. It's about 58% for schools, about 38% for the city, 3% for sewer CSO, 1% for the ballot items. So that's a breakout. So that's the fast tour through the budget. Happy to answer any questions. Of course, many department heads are here. Today is our final public hearing. early voting will start in mid-February. The actual voting day, as you just said, was March 5th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
I had a constituent inquiry today about one of the personnel items, but I think it applies to everything. When we have, when we're showing a new position we're creating, and there's a dollar value associated to that, is that salary plus
Yes.
fringes
All-
and
all
overhead
in,
and everything?
all
in?
costs in.
Okay, thank you.
So at this point, if the council has more clarifying questions, we can do that, and then I'd like to open it up to the public for public comments, and then we'll continue on with more substantive discussion with the council. So any clarifying questions? Yes.
Which I can take from my seat once I turn this.
So this is,
Oh, do you want me to put the spreadsheet up?
actually, that would be helpful for my question.
Sorry.
So while you're getting it up, I'll ask it. The additional parks position, not the tree management, but the additional parks position has been discussed as 65,000?
It's 55.
We had it
On
at
the
55.
spreadsheet, it is 55. So I just wanted to clarify which number it is.
The number that we worked with in the budget was 55,000. I've lately seen a different number, but the number we had was 55.
Okay, so 55 is our number.
Right.
Any further clarifying questions? Okay, comments from the public on the budget. If you'd introduce yourself and tell us where you live.
Hello, I'm Nancy Chickering. I live right here in Montpelier, up on Core Street, the very top of that Cliff Street Hill. So I'm really close to the park, and I'm interested in that comment you just made, because I'm here also just to get clarification in terms of parks and trees. I love how we're trying to merge and carry things under bigger umbrellas. My understanding, and I may be wrong, and I'm glad to see Jeff here because he might help clarify this for me. My understanding with the Emerald Ash Borer is a lot of good conversation went on about how we can be proactive about not being like some other communities further south, not taking, stepping in and dealing with that proactively. My understanding is that parks and tree position is really a tree position and not so much supporting the park and all the expansion that I would like to see them do. So I just thought I would put a plug in to see. I've been next door neighbors to the park for 25 years, and I worry about the sustainability with Jeff, who I've watched for 2+ decades. They work, and Alec is right there like Jeff. They work. It's not a 40-hour-a-week job. They plow at 6. They're there 7 days a week. They overdo, and it's amazing. And it shows in the community. They have, volunteers, global volunteers. They have churches putting them up, and people volunteering their canoes and their chainsaws and their work parties. And I just think it's amazing what they do with their budget. And it's amazing what the city has done to prioritize that. And I love that Bill's first 2 slides had community prosperity and then environmental stewardship. And I just think the park and the extension of trails now into North Branch is just so much about what makes Montpelier an absolutely amazing place to live. And it's one of the things that lets us see that we're growing the 20 and 30 and 40-year-old people that I think we really need to be calling into this community if we want this community to be sustainable. That kind of recreation is critical. And I'm just blown away with what I've seen that park do for the last 25 years. So that's my plug for the park, and hoping that that money is really supporting the park and not just supporting Emerald Ash Borer and tree stuff that I think is also really, really important.
So just to clarify, the additional position that was added, that you saw listed there, really was about trees. Specifically, we may discuss a little later a separate position potentially that would be more related to parks.
So I'll jump in on that too.
Fair?
No, that's fair.
Yeah.
And so initially there were 2 positions proposed, one just for trees, one just for parks. And I think as we went through both as a staff to recommend a budget, which we recommended the one position, and the council came in with this, Currently, we split the parks and trees amongst the existing employees. I don't like having my back to everybody, but we split the parks and trees with the existing employees, and we get that there's maybe a bigger demand, but all of our departments have demands, and we're trying to balance that. So the feeling is that there's probably, it didn't seem like there would be tree work 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, and that the efforts could be shared, and that one person with trees is going to need help from parks employees anyway. And the thought was, let's try this for a year, see how it goes. We're going to have new leadership there, see what changes and what demands there are, and then reconsider the other staffing position after we've had a chance. It wasn't necessarily this would never be. So from my perspective, and I can't speak for the council, it wasn't as black and white as this is trees only and this is parks only. They really are a blended group. Right now, the two of them do both. So that's the answer I give you.
Hi, Dan Dickerson from the Parks Commission. I wanted to come up and also make one final push for the new parks position, and I guess I wanted to expand a little bit, or at least talk a little bit about what this new trees position, or parks and trees, however you want to frame it, what it provides, but where it actually could create some limitations. And so what it provides, I think it provides the city the ability to sort of think strategically about how to address emerald ash borer in our street trees, in our parks, and throughout the community. But when it really comes down to doing the groundwork, so going out and addressing the huge tree care backlog that we have, and also dealing with emerald ash borer, you can't do that with one person. And so the city could say, well, all right, we'll contract with a firm to do some of this work, or take another route. But if we want trees, or if we want city staff to be taking care of the trees, you need to have more people doing that. And so what happens is, if we have this tree person that's going to go out and care for the street trees, we're going to end up pulling a parks person to help on that, or potentially both parks people to help on that, and that leaves the parks empty. And so, and I don't want to say that, this trees position is very important. I think it's going to allow the city to do great things, but I think, really, in order to address the backlog in trees maintenance and parks maintenance, we really need two positions. So that way we could have at least a two-person crew doing tree work, and we could always have a two-person crew doing park work, and it would allow us to get more done, both on the trees front and the parks front. I know it's a cost increase, and ultimately it's a tax increase, but given that parks and trees are currently 2.4% of the city budget, and I'm paying $50 a year, I think it's pretty reasonable to request this position. And maybe there are some residents that would be unwilling to take on that tax increase, but I think given the use that our parks receive, and given that on top of the other benefits of having this new position, we could also increase staff presence within the park to maybe educate people on canine care and bikes, so that way it reduces some of the consternation on Front Porch Forum. There are just a lot of ways that this position would benefit the city, and so I really strongly encourage the city council to approve the funding for the position. And sorry I've gone too long. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't get to red yet.
Hi, my name is Kasha Ranjo. I am also on the Parks Commission. I'm on North Park Drive, and this is Celeste. And like many of you, my family has chosen to live in Montpelier and chosen where to live in Montpelier because of our parks. And I've chosen to give back to our parks. I work in conservation as my profession. I fundraise. I've already been helping the parks address some of those needs, and I'm glad to do that. And in recent years, we've invested in the expansion of our parks and the expansion of our services. There are new trails in North Branch Park. There are plans to add Confluence Park in the future, and the parks are something that draw young families like my own to come live here and stay here and invest in this community. We've invested in expanding our parks, and and we have not invested in expanding the staff to run our parks. And that's a problem. And I'm hoping that you guys will consider adding an additional parks person. We've discussed the tree position. That is not a parks position. They're separate. If we want to invest in the future of our parks, we need to invest in the staff to keep them the way they are and make them even better for the future. Thank you.
Go. John Snell, tree board, among other things, frequenter of the parks. I appreciate coming back here and talking and clarifying that the person I supported you in bringing on for trees is still an essential person, and that's who shows up in the budget. And that person's already at work. They've already made a difference. It's going to continue to make a difference in the backlog as well as in dealing with the Emerald Ash Borer. I have long thought that we needed an additional parks person, and when I started to talk with Jeff about what's going on with his retirement, it became very clear that when he retires, basically we're going to be down 1.5 people, not one person. And I talked to Jeff about how disorganized he can be sometimes, but I also will tell you that there is nobody in this town who can pull in volunteers like that guy. It takes time. It takes time to manage them. And yet, if we were to run DPW with as many volunteers as Parks does, we'd be in trouble. So I think that it's pretty clear to me that with Jeff retiring, with the expansion, not only of the size of the park, adding now a new trail along the river, what's formerly known as the bike path, and also adding new events that have been really well received by the community in the parks. One of which will be next week again. That there's just a tremendous demand for the system of parks that we have, and they create immense value. They are a pull to people to come here and live here, especially young families. So I'm asking you to put the money back in for another person. I think we need that person, and that person will be well utilized with our new parks director. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Polly Nickel, and I'm here representing the Housing Task Force, and I'm here to talk about funding for the Housing Trust Fund. 2 weeks ago, I attended an amazing event, and a number of you were there, and it was the opening of the French Block, which after 80 years, there will now be people living in those apartments. And I think that event just speaks for itself in terms of what a relatively small investment of community resources, in that case, the Housing Trust Fund, can do for a city. And I used to work as a public funder of affordable housing, and I still have a lot of friends in that area. And they say repeatedly that the investments that a city like Montpelier make all the difference in the world in a very hyper competitive funding environment. Really gives us a leg up. And the money that the Housing Trust Fund invested in the French Block leveraged millions of dollars, both from private investors like banks, but also public funding. So on behalf of the task force, we're very pleased with the level of funding that came out of the last hearing, and we would urge you to keep it that way. And we think that together we can continue to make progress on both affordability and availability of housing for people in Montpelier of all economic strata. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So, council, what is your interest? Or do you like it as it is? Do you want to change anything? Where do you want to go? Go ahead, Connor.
The risk of being a flip-flopper, I supported the parks position before I opposed it. Spent a lot of time the last couple of weeks just talking to constituents, and I really do believe there's an appetite for this in the community. You know, the expansion. My hang-up initially was when we were talking about the part-time position, was I thought this would be overwhelming to put on anybody for a part-time job, and in effect it would create a full-time position with a part-time person doing the work. So I think I'd like to propose putting a full-time position in the budget this time around, but maybe starting 6 months in the fiscal year, so that it would start in January, I believe. And to be honest, I haven't done the math on it yet. But I'd like to put that on the table, and if it's appropriate, I'd make a motion to do it.
Second.
Any further thoughts on that? Oh, let's go Rosie, then Ashley.
So, two concerns. First, I feel like we've already done a little bit of a disservice and a little bit of a hiding the ball here by playing that same trick with the new facility director position and starting it partway through the year so that the city doesn't see the full budget impact this year, but we will be stuck with it next year unless we want to lay somebody off. So I'm really uncomfortable with playing that game again here. And I also want to say that I appreciated the council last time considered this thoroughly and decided to make the hard decision to cut that addition. It's not a cut of a position because the position doesn't exist yet, but to not add that new position at this time. I'm very concerned that our tax rate is growing so much higher than the cost of living increase that many living on a fixed income will receive next year. Our social safety net is really fragile right now. I'm hearing every day from folks who never would have thought that they would have needed assistance and are now finding themselves wondering where they can get assistance. And so this is not the year to play that game, and this is not the year to increase even as much as 3.4%. I'm frankly still not feeling good there. And to, you know, I'm sure that if we add this position, the budget will pass. That's not my concern. I'm not concerned that voters will vote the budget down. I'm concerned about the people who don't have a voice at the table and who are really struggling and on a fixed income and not able to get the assistance that they need. So I'm very much opposed to that. I'm going to echo a lot of what Rosie said. I was just doing some math over here, and I think the minimum wage in Vermont is now like $10.78 an hour. And according to a number of sites, the average rent for an apartment here is $950. I'm not sure where the $950 a month apartments are in Montpelier. I have not been able to find them in all of my years here. And so I was waiting to see what the school budget numbers would look like. And it looks like the overall tax bill as it is with this budget at the 3.42, which is too high for me even, you know, it's $185 extra a year. And for the folks who can absorb $185 extra per year, that's great. And that's fine. And, you know, that increase is sort of not taking away anything. It's maybe taking away some discretionary income or some, you know, some savings or something where they're not going to feel it. But doing the math out at $10.78 an hour, that assuming a 40-hour work week, that's $1724.80 a month, and then I did a 30% reduction for taxes and, you know, and whatever else sort of comes off the top, which leaves you with $1,207.36, and then you subtract $950, which is the average rent rate now, which gives you a whopping, I want to say it is, let's see, $257.36 left if you're working full-time on minimum wage, finding some magical unicorn apartment that I have yet to find in this city. Then when you talk about raising property taxes, even, you know, even $185 a year, I mean, that translates in significant ways when it comes to rental properties and things like that. And I would love to believe that all landlords are altruistic, but in all of the years that I've been renting, when property taxes go up, what typically happens is renters do experience an increase. And I just don't see where folks who are working for minimum wage, let alone even $15 an hour in our community, are going to be able to absorb, a rent increase like that when, that doesn't even include health insurance and you don't qualify, at least at, 125% of the federal poverty guideline on a $10.78 an hour wage, let alone at a $15 an hour wage. And I love a lot about Montpelier. I love our parks. I value so much the work that our employees put in. And I know every city employee puts in extra. Anyone who works in government puts in extra. I do it myself all the time. But what I cannot do is go home and, when my friends and my neighbors are looking at me saying, I can't afford to live here, I have to start looking elsewhere, I can't in good conscience support a budget with even a 3.42% increase. I'd been thinking like 2.8 to 3.2, somewhere in there. But this directly impacts a lot of the people that I love and care about in our community. And I appreciate the need that Montpelier has. But I also appreciate that in order to keep this a place where every single person who is already here and some of the folks that we want to move here can afford to be here, this is not sustainable.
Donna.
Well, I take all your comments about the budget in general, but I'm not going to want to see the parks held hostage for the total objection to the amount of what we're putting in our budget. So if you want to go and open all the items, fine, but the parks really need a full-time position. And I'd like to see it full-time for a full year, but at least Connor was offering a compromise that I could go with. It's better than nothing. But I don't think the parks, that is a small 2.4% of our budget now, should be the one to suffer. If you want to go and look at all the other items, I'll go there. But I'm not going to put it on the parks to be the one not to get what they need.
Other comments? Glenn.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to add much. I'm also a flip-flopper since I supported this added position at the first workshop and then agreed to take it off at the first hearing. I continue to be conflicted about this. I think that it seems clear to me that we could very happily use more staff in parks. The Parks Commission, who are elected to take care of a lot of that, have told us that we should. At the same time, it does make sense to me that from a kind of structural, organizational point of view, we have one new employee this year working on trees. We're going to be hiring a new director. That new director could potentially be the best person to be directly involved in hiring another person if we need one next year. I think I would love to see us hire another person for fiscal year 21 if we need to, and have that conversation then. Because while I hear a lot of the arguments, I'm not sure I quite feel the urgency that we need a new position, a new full-time position right now, as opposed to next year. That said, there have been some really strong arguments, and many of them over the last couple of weeks in favor of the new parks position, and I can't say I'm not swayed by those. I really appreciate the conversation. I still don't know. I thought I would be fixed by now, and I'm not. So I think that's all I have to say at the moment.
Can Bill put some numbers in? I can't get your spreadsheet you sent us to be active. It won't accept my numbers.
That's right. What do you want?
Under
The half position?
Yeah, the parks.
27.5.
Well,
not-
so,
it's not over there
Todd,
for-
would that be an accurate number for?
Well, that's half of 55.
But it's not
Right,
over-
but it's,
Sorry, I put it
the
in the wrong
benefits
place.
might not make it half.
Well,
Or maybe it does, because if it's starting in January. Any thoughts, Todd?
I'll just put it here.
Bill, you got 5,000.
I don't know why it's not popping up.
It's really
27.5.
difficult to predict that because depending on who we hire and whether they're on a family plan or a single plan, whether they opt out of benefits because they have coverage somewhere else, the young person, a lot of people stay on their plans until they're 26 years old, so it'd be much cheaper. So there's a sway of $20,000 in essentially in the benefit package just due to health insurance, potentially.
Can I ask you, well, since you're here, what if this position was contracted? That would not necessarily obligate us to hire it the next year, but maybe sort of evaluate whether or not it was really needed, but by the following year.
Contracting is certainly possible. You run the risk of running afoul with state labor laws just because you have to be, it has to be truly an independent person that does the work as a business, has their own insurance, holds a shingle out to operate as such, and that we don't have control over their schedule. So they would be setting their own hours. We would be paying them based on that. So it's certainly a possibility. Just I want to be careful that we don't
Yep.
just grab an individual.
Yep, okay. Donna, yeah.
So I'm just trying to read the numbers, so I think my reading glasses aren't as good as these.
You mean down here?
Is that 92?
Yeah, this is
92, yes.
92.
Okay.
3.71.
3.7.
Yeah.
Okay, from 3.5, okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask what the difference is with that number added there, Bill, from previously?
It was
It was
3.42 before.
Right.
Yeah, $7.
And, oh, and a $7 difference?
Yeah, $7 difference.
Rosie?
Just want to point out again, though, that you're forcing a future council to take the brunt of the decision that you're making. It looks like only $7 this year, but once we hire that person, they're a member of our community, and I can't imagine that we would be able to let them go if we decided we didn't actually need their services. The public, even if the council made the decision, the public outcry to lay off a particular individual who worked in our parks would be insane. I mean, we wouldn't be able to do it. So once you're making the decision to put this position in, it's until that person decides that they'd like to leave.
Glenn, would you like a 2-minute recess?
I don't.
Donna, would you like just a couple-minute recess?
Just practically, on the practical aspect, I would, yes.
Okay. I will just say there have been times when I have felt very conflicted, and I just needed a minute to collect my thoughts, and I just want to make sure that I offer that to you if you want that.
Thank you. I think I'm slower than you. I would need more than that. But since we could use a recess anyway, let's do it.
But Jack, before we have a recess, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I supported this before. I think that the idea that we're losing expertise and a lot of overtime and having Jeff retire was persuasive to me. I'll also point out that, as all of you know, in the last several days, we've received a tremendous volume of email from residents supporting this position. And I don't truly think that we're here on the council simply to be a mouthpiece for people who, for the people in the community. I think that one of the things people should expect from all of us on the council is our judgment of on the issues that come before us. But it's hard to ignore that there's a lot of support for this. Now, I don't know how much 10 emails translates to in terms of overall popular support. That's a question that legislators deal with all over the place, but it seems like a pretty popular position. So I supported it before, and I continue to support it.
So I'll just weigh in and say there was a proposal. There was this number being floated around, the $65,000, and I believe the reason there was this discrepancy was because there was this $10,000 potential for some additional parks help over the summer, and that was most interesting to me. I felt like, well, we could do something temporary, hire some people over the summer, and do increase the parks staff that way, when it would certainly be useful. Depending on wherever we land, I'm not in favor of a full-time position, but I would entertain the half. So anyway, I'll just leave it there for now, and let's take a 2 5-minute. Well, let's go. Realistically, it's going to be 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So let's go with a 5-minute break. Okay.
I'll leave one at your desk.
Sorry. Yeah, no, for real.
Is it? Did I get one?
I went over there first, how dare me?
Thank you. That's okay. Oh, did you just email this to me?
Yes, yeah, it's a council evaluation draft, self-evaluation form.
You want
We're gonna talk
Okay.
about it.
Factual.
Okay, thank you.
Because I was too late.
Bill, this 9,000 number in here is if we don't make any changes.
Important work.
For 9,000.
Not 9,000.
Yes, that was the budget that we started with tonight. Yes, so any changes, we will have to change that number. That's, Todd's keeping track of that. To make sure we vote the right number.
Is that what you call that?
Jack's not like down the hallway, is he?
I'll take it. I was born in Cooperstown.
Okay.
There you go.
Oh, there he is.
It's just that visual, the big guy and that voice.
I was out drinking.
You know that song, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cece and Matt.
There's a girl.
That's what he told me. He said, I'll get a drink and I'll be right in.
Yeah. Okay.
Very-
No, I worked for, I had a West End, it was John Henry. And I had a brother, Henry. Get stuck.
Okay, we are all back, so we're going to come back from our recess. And so just to get things started, Bill, you have a comment about
Yeah,
the data here.
Just piece of information. Obviously what you decide to do, where you choose to set your priorities is your call. But I want to make sure everyone's dealing with correct information. There was a comment made about how we had not changed the park staff, and I haven't had a chance to go research this, but I think I can say fairly accurately from memory. I know when I started here, which was 24 years ago, there was one quarter-time position. Eventually got increased to half, 3/4, and a full-time. Then we've added the second full-time position that was in there. When we consolidated with, put together some of the community services, some of the admin services, such as booking shelters and publicity brochures have all been picked up by admin folks that used to be done by parks. So it's not really adding people, it was taking responsibilities off. So it may well be the time that we need additional folks, but it isn't totally accurate to say that we've not increased staffing over a period of time. As the parks have grown, we have done that. And as well as adding the part-time tree positions.
Sure, and I wanted to just also add a quick conversation reminding me that we do the administration or some of the admin work is done by people
That's what I
in
was
the
just saying, the community
services.
services
Right. That-
piece that does that. So yeah, we
Okay.
went from one quarter
Great.
position to now 2 full,
Okay.
plus the admin services, plus the.
Got you, okay,
part-time tree.
thank you. Okay, anybody have any further comments? Yeah, go ahead.
Dan Dickerson again from the Parks Commission. I did want to sort of make an attempt to address some of the concerns that Councilwoman Hill and Councilwoman Berger had. This position, it doesn't need to be a lawyer or somebody with a physics degree. It can be somebody that's coming off of substance abuse, somebody that's coming out of the criminal justice system that needs a new opportunity. This is somebody that would go into the parks and essentially do grunt work, repairing trails, pulling invasive species. It's good life experience for anyone. And so it does, yes, there would still be people that would have to make ends meet on low incomes, but it would create an opportunity for somebody that's maybe making minimum wage now to move up a little bit and have an opportunity to really make a difference for the community. And so it doesn't fully address your current concerns, but it is an opportunity for somebody that maybe is trying to move up a little bit.
Thank you. Go ahead, John.
Just one more quick one, because I do hear what Bill's saying about that other services have been added on to the park, and yet the park has expanded, and the missions of the park have expanded tremendously, especially in the last five years or so. And that's gonna happen again with the addition of the new bike path. That'll be a park responsibility. So I think we've added in enough that it's time for another person.
Go ahead, Rosie.
I'm just seeing Bill make a face about the bike path, and I'm just wondering if that's actually our plan. I thought it was gonna be a DPW responsibility.
Yeah, the bike, well, I don't want to get in an intramural food fight with our staff. We can talk about that tomorrow morning, but typically the bike paths are maintained with, by DPW. I know the park does the piece about the Peace Park out on that one. But maybe they've had a discussion and have decided the parks are going to do it, so
Invasive.
of the invasive species. Again, I'm not sure why that's the parks.
Okay, if, okay, go ahead, Glenn.
Yes. So I think I did come to something, and it may be a little awkward because what I feel like at the moment is going with my instinct, which is when somebody asks, say yes, and yeah, Bill's laughing at that, and I do think that with all of the arguments that have been put forward in favor of a new parks position, I think that I'm on board with that, and at the same time, I really think that Rosie's point about not saddling the future council with a half a position is sensible. So I'd actually put in the whole position at 55. Right. I feel like I need to say something else about it, and I'm not sure what it is. But I think your comment about the parks being the target kind of this budget pressure at this point, I think it's kind of just because that's how it came down to the timing. But I think that to me, the budget number higher than cost of living increase at all, once it's higher than cost of living increase, it's higher in a way, and beyond that, a lot of the little adjustments, an extra few dollars here or there, it starts to feel like we're doing a disservice to the whole process. And I would say a whole position or not a position, and that's where I am. I would move that we put the full parks position in at 55 grand.
Is a motion on the table?
We've got a
Oh,
motion
yes,
already on the
excuse
table, so
me.
we gotta vote on that, and then.
Yeah. Okay.
You could amend it.
Or,
I can, all right, there we go. I'll suggest an amendment that we go from the half a position to full position.
Is there,
I'll second.
okay, so, I will just say that I think, I mean.
do we have to vote on the amendment to?
Yes,
first?
the amendment first, and then the other motion. So I guess I would just add that, we all know that Jeff does a wonderful job, and he's also just an X factor, right? Like, because what is the new person going to be like, right? And how is that time-wise going to work? So my inclination is to wait and not go full-time at this point, but that's just what I would advise. So, any other further comments about this amendment? No? Okay. All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay.
Okay. I think that it meant that it did not pass. I think I heard enough no's there and it did not pass. Okay. So we're back to the original motion of a half-time position. And there's a motion on the table. Any further discussion about that? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Okay, so I think that carries. So we're at a half position there, but starting, sure, full-time, but starting in January 27. Is that? Okay, great. Okay, any other changes, or are we done, team?
I guess I'm just gonna put out there one more time. You know, we've had this discussion so many times, and I've lost every time. So let's just go. Let's do it. I was gonna propose more cuts, but we know where we are.
Fair enough. Any further comments? I think what do we need to do at this point? Do we need to vote this budget all together and then close the, and then I'll close the public hearing after?
And vote, or, yeah.
Either.
You should probably close the hearing and
Okay.
then vote.
Before we close the public hearing, though, if anyone would like to offer any further comments on the budget. Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing, and is there a motion on the budget as proposed so far with this amendment?
I move that we adopt the budget as reflected by the changes we made tonight.
Further,
I'll second.
further discussion? Okay,
Just going to say again that it is the responsibility of the council to look out for more than just the people who write us the emails and who have the ability to attend meetings. And I'm very concerned that this council doesn't do that. And we need to be looking out for the voices that aren't at the table. So.
Thank you. Okay, further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay.
Okay, so the budget passes. And thank you all for your discussion. All right, so we are going to move on to this charter amendment. So this is also a public hearing. So I'm going to open up the public hearing on the proposed charter change regarding energy efficiency. And I'm going to welcome Richard Fazy back up to the table. He was with us last time. And I know, Rose, you weren't here last time to necessarily meet Richard Fazy, so I'll let him introduce himself. I think last time I had made the comment that I should probably not be both the champion and the expert and try to moderate the meeting all at the same time, and so I'm grateful to have you here, Richard. So I'll let you introduce yourself, I guess.
Okay. Great. Thank you. My name is Richard Fazy. I live in Starksboro, so I'm not a Montpelier resident, but I have an energy consulting firm called Energy Futures Group in Heinsberg, and have been working on building energy labeling issues for quite a while, including a number of stakeholder groups and part of the discussion at the state level for a number of years. So I'm basically here as a resource to help answer any questions or and support this initiative moving forward.
Okay, any questions about the charter amendment?
You should probably open the public hearing.
Oh, I think, did I?
Did you do that? And
Well, if I didn't, I'll do it now. I thought I did, but
seek any comment
opening
on-
the public hearing for the second public hearing on this charter amendment. Yeah, Rosie.
I didn't get a chance to watch the last meeting. I just read the minutes, and I can't remember if there was discussion about inserting energy before efficiency standards. Was that already
Yes, and
dealt
that-
with, and did we do it?
We did, and the language that's attached here also does not have the word energy. So let's assume that that is, because that's what we approved last time, that should be in here as well. But we can make that clear.
And you should, yeah, well, you can do it, and you can also do it when you vote the warning.
Yeah.
You should definitely vote.
Because the language is on, oh, it doesn't have it on the warning.
It should be on the warning as a whole.
But the
It's
word
not.
energy is not in
in the warning, right, so.
In the warning.
It wouldn't be the only change, though, because the budget, well.
Yeah, we know we have to
we'll get a
change
new number
that,
there.
but-
Yeah. But yeah, just making a note that, to make sure that that change is made in, at least on, well, really in both places, I suppose. Okay.
So it will read minimum energy efficiency standards.
Yes. Jack?
At a tiny point, I just noticed in the language, the way it was distributed to the council, there's a space missing between powers and in the heading.
Oh, power sand.
Power sand, yeah.
Power sand.
And I don't know if that's...
I don't think that's really how it is in
Okay.
the charter, so we
Okay,
can just
well,
double
good.
check that, but yes. And that is not on the warning, so should be fine. Any further questions? Okay, any comments from the public? Oh, yeah, okay.
I always have these two with me.
Tim Heaney, real estate broker in Montpelier and a resident. Been chair of the Government Affairs Committee of Vermont Realtors for a number of years, not anymore, but I think I've talked with you on conference calls, Richard, and some of those meetings. So basically, I talked with Ann a couple weeks ago about this. She called and said like, oh, I'm thinking of this, some ordinances and thoughts on energy efficiency. And all of a sudden I'm here tonight and it's the second reading on this charter change. I'm like, whoa, where'd this come from? So it seems like it's come up quickly. My experience at the state level, listening to those conversations with Efficiency Vermont and the legislature's considered policies for energy efficiency, the devil's in the details on this one, and there's a lot of details to understand. I'm not sure Montpelier's in a position in terms of governments to take on another level of governments and enforcement. I think we've got our hands full right now in terms of building and planning and what we can really handle. So I think you should be very careful about this. The overall charter change piece that I read for the first time tonight when I looked at the agenda is really open. And it says, I don't even have it in front of me, it was like local, state, and other policies. It's a little bit too jello for me. I'd like to see it be more specific. And I also think it's well motivated, but if you're concerned about housing and taking care of people and providing good, safe environments where they can be comfortable, there's some other issues we need to talk about as well that might slide ahead on my chart over this. We own a number of properties. We work hard at making them efficient. It's an inch-by-inch process sometimes, but it costs a lot of money, and I think a lot of people do keep investing in efficiency, even if tenants are paying the energy bills and landlords aren't. We try to. But I think that the piece that I'm really concerned about here is how you tie it together and look at issues like, I go through a lot of houses, a lot of multifamily properties, probably as many as anyone in Montpelier. There's a lot of issues we should be talking about if you want to talk about making housing safer and better. Jack, you know it. I mean, wiring, my goodness. We hit more buildings with knob and tube wiring that's still active. We hit it every day in our office, generating sales. Insurance companies won't insure them anymore for new buyers. Lenders don't want to touch them. But they're out there, they're rented, people are living in them, and there are no incentives to improve those situations. I think if you really want to do something right, this ordinance is, the concept is great, but I think you're misguided. I think you really should bring together a group, decide what really the priorities should be, and align those. And I think some of those priorities need to be some real safety issues, because you really want to wire the place first and get the wiring right, and then you add the insulation. It's kind of a meathead move to add the insulation, and then go back and have to tear it all out and rewire the place. For what it's worth, just forgive my lack of focus, but I guess I'm really a little spun up about this. Surprised there hasn't been more conversation, and I hope you won't approve it tonight, and we'll open it up for a bigger dialogue. Thanks.
Go ahead, Donna.
What, do you think if we added some incentive, maybe, and whether it's a loan process or some financial support, that if we went ahead with this amendment and then considered that that's part of our responsibility, is to look for a way to support that happening financially?
When you say make that happen, are you talking
I mean,
efficiency
we-
moves or
if
making
we-
housing better?
Well, the efficiency moves here
Yeah.
that ultimately will make housing better, but if we also try to do it in some way that's a partnership.
I do think it's a great idea. I think it's needed because there are a lot of old buildings in Montpelier. The bulk of our housing stock is pre-1978.
Yep.
And there are a lot of issues that go within that kind of housing in addition to energy issues.
You signed it.
So Tim, I just want to add. I hear you about the that there's a just a multiplicitude of issues that plague our housing stock, and I guess I would say that I don't think these things are mutually exclusive. Let's talk about all the things that need to happen.
Exactly.
I would love to talk further with you about, or any subgroup of people interested in housing, about how we can be addressing how particularly rental safety in Montpelier. But I don't hear that necessarily as precluding this. So let's talk about how we can be doing all of the above, and we'll work out the details as they come up.
Yeah,
Okay.
Just Efficiency Vermont's a great organization,
Yeah.
but they have a mission that's pretty focused.
Yeah.
And I think we need a little bigger picture here that can be part
Sure.
of. So I think that's the same thing.
Future conversation. Let's do it. Great. Thank you. Further comments? I guess Rosie.
So I had a lot of concerns with the first version of this ordinance, or not ordinance, it's not an ordinance, it's a charter change. And I appreciate the new language because it doesn't nail us down to a specific ordinance change, and it gives us the time to think through the pros and cons of every potential ordinance change after we get permission to do it. So I really appreciate, Tim, everything that you say there, because I think you're right. There are a lot of, this is not this is not a solution, but I think the idea is that we can get permission to do this work and then do the hard work of figuring out what ordinance gets at these goals, and what are the implications of that, and bring in a lot of stakeholders to that in the future. That's my hope. I would urge this council to not rush too fast into two ordinances under this without thinking things through, but I am willing to support this because it doesn't dictate a specific course of action.
Ashley.
I'll echo much of what Rosie said. I have some specific policy ideas and some potential ordinances that I'm interested in raising. It's just wanted to focus on all of this stuff for now and sort of see what happens there. But I think there are still some very tangible things that as a city that we can do in terms of renters' rights and things like that, that I have been talking to other municipalities in the area and sort of doing some research on my own, just in terms of, what redress do tenants have and things like that. So I agree that this is a good starting point, but there's still a lot of other pieces that have to come into place, because energy efficiency is awesome, but if nobody can afford to be in those places because we've prioritized one thing over another, or so.
Great. Okay. Further comments? Any further comments from the public? Okay. So I'm going to close the public hearing on that. And just looking at our notes here, do we need to approve this?
Even though you're going to approve the warning, you should approve the charter language, final charter language. If you want to make sure that energy language is in there, then specifically put it in.
Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the proposed energy efficiency charter amendment with the addition of the word energy on the first line.
Second.
Further comments? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Okay. And on to the warning of the
ballot.
The ballot, yeah, right.
So we should have a new number for the budget for Article 5.
So, excuse me, Article 5 has increased by the 27,500 that we just added for the half-part position, so the new number is 9,466,621. And in addition, I have just updated the warning to reflect the charter amendment. First sentence to read, enact ordinances enforcing minimum energy efficiency standards. Other than that, the version that you have in front of you is the same as you're receiving for signature, minus those two changes.
Did we open
I
the
actually think
public
it's
hearing?
9466121.
9466121.
It's just,
Yeah, I think that's correct.
it's only $500 difference, but
Where did he go?
he went to double check it. He didn't believe me.
Okay.
Trust and verify, right?
This doesn't say that it's a public hearing.
It
Oh, it is, it is a public, well, it says it in the subject. So I'll open the public
city
hearing
meeting, yeah.
on the warning of the ballot.
So I would add that a couple things on that besides the number change and the language change. Call a couple things to attention. One, an initial draft of the ballot included a potential petitioned article concerning the parking structure. I don't know if Sheila wants to report on that.
Oh, sure. So Article 12 is going to be struck because we didn't receive enough petition signatures. We only received 180 verified signatures by the deadline today.
Okay. Thank you. Now, while we're talking about that, I just want to say, I had sort of half expected that maybe someone would be here from that group. And had they been here, I had a couple of questions I was hoping to ask them, so I'm just going to say them out loud now and hopefully follow up with them later. One was of the list of criteria on the petition that they had been circulating. I was curious if the group that's appealing the DRB decision had a list of concerns that are outside of those criteria, or if that was the extent of their concerns. I was also curious about really what their aim was, like what is their goal with the petition or with the appeal. I was very encouraged to read Andrea Stander's remarks in the Bridge the other day, that she's looking for improvements to the project, and I would love to talk about that. So to that end, I mean, I had, last time they were here to talk about the petition, they had, we had I had thought that we might be meeting at some point, and then they appealed. So once lawyers are involved, it gets a little trickier, but I guess I would say that I want you to know that no one reached out to me from their group to get in touch about resolving those issues, but I'm just going to say publicly right now that I'm going to reach out to them, and while I'm not in a position to negotiate anything, I still would love to hear from them. I know they have concerns about the content of the project, as well as the process that happened around it, and I am open to hearing all of that. So, if the city can be learning from this process, basically, from going through this, I'm certainly open to that. So, anyway, so I just want you all to know that's my plan. I'm going to be reaching out to them very soon.
The only other issue that actually Councilmember Hill raised, and unfortunately we don't have John here, although maybe Sheila can answer this, is the issue, the Central Vermont Public Safety Authority. We're electing a position for that, even though we don't know what its current status is.
So you didn't get that person's,
Oh, there you go. Donna would know. So,
and they believe Kim Cheney is the at-large who's running.
right, but is it still continuing? That's what we weren't sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Did we end up putting money in the budget for that?
You don't put money, we put it on the budget. We have our own, you could put it on the ballot. We chose not to put it on the
Oh.
ballot. Tried to explain that earlier.
Okay, so you're referring to Article 4?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too, because it was missing the name. So did you get Kim's petition?
Oh, well, so this is the warning, the actual ballot has the candidates' names. Like, for example, it just says to elect one school district, one city council member, those kind of things,
Right.
so it doesn't.
You do have his petition.
I believe so, yes. We have another week anyway before petitions are due.
Okay.
And
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I think maybe I was confused. Sheila, can you repeat what you said? Article 12 has been struck? Is that what?
It's not Article 12 on this. They took it off already.
Oh, I see.
Oh,
Okay.
it was Article
The
12.
former
It was-
Article
it was
12.
the former Article
12, sorry about that.
Okay, thank you.
So that's it. Those were my
Okay.
only things to
So,
call out.
any other public comment about the warning? Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing there, and I think we need to vote to approve the ballot as amended. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the ballot as amended.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor, oh, did you want to?
I just wanted to confirm that the city manager was absolutely right, and my fingers got a little bit clumsy at the end there. I'm gonna blame the Band-Aid, but it is 121.
There we go, great, okay.
So do we need to clarify that in our motion?
Do you want to clarify that, Donna?
I didn't list a number. So I
So-
said as
so you're
amended,
voting-
and Bill had amended earlier.
I'll state it, and then someone can move it. So you're voting to approve the warning as presented, except that Article 5 will include the number 9,466,121, and Article 14 will add the word energy between minimum and efficiency.
And that, Donna, that was your intent? right?
Yes, that was
Okay.
my intent.
Great.
Yep.
And the second agrees, okay.
Still second.
Great, so further discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
I
Okay.
want to be clear in my aye vote, that is to approve the petition, not necessarily anything with relation to the items in it, but.
Yep, fair.
No.
It's okay.
No.
I just, people are watching and it's, it's a confusing process, so I just want to.
Okay.
Approving the ballot.
Okay. All right, so that is the end of our regular business, which is great. So we're going to move on. Oh, did I close the public hearing? I think I did.
I think you did.
Okay. So moving on to council
Ask
reports.
clerk if she's got it down. She's the one that.
You got it, okay. Who would like to start? Go ahead, Rosie.
I can start. I just wanted to let folks know that I know federal employees and others impacted by the federal shutdown are really struggling. And we do have a number of federal employees who live and work in Montpelier. One source of help is the free and reduced, is the school meal program. And anybody at any time throughout the year who has a change in income, who has children in the schools is welcome to submit an updated application for free and reduced price meals. That, they can reach out to their school to get that application or find that application on the web. And certainly having a $0 paycheck is a change in income. So that is one form of assistance. I know that Capstone and the Vermont Food Bank and a bunch of other community organizations have been also trying to put together some resources as well. And I appreciated Ashley bringing that up earlier and suggesting that we think about, what can Montpelier do. And certainly recognizing that lots of other folks face financial hardship all the time as well. But this is a group of folks who has really been, I think we all have a lot of opinions about this shutdown. And so I just wanted to put that out there as a resource that's available to anybody who has a change of income at any point in the year and is struggling. I also wanted to, again, make a plug for running for city council. This is a lovely early meeting tonight. So don't take this as your sample meeting.
That's an endorsement.
You haven't heard my report
Snacks
yet.
because I
Could
was
go on
worried we were
forever.
gonna go late. But I, as you know, I'm not running, so I would encourage folks to run for District 1 or to run for any seat. A little competition is great for the community, and there are other seats available on some of the Parks Commission, and we just cemetery. So if you are feeling like you need to do something in this time of crazy political upheaval, this is a good step to take. So that's my plug for running. I'm happy to talk to anybody who is interested about what the job entails.
Thank you.
I would first and foremost like to thank Chief in the back there. I understand that he was at the State House today representing police across the state of Vermont and shared some really great information about what we here in Montpelier are doing in terms of fair and impartial policing. And I know that there are a lot of organizations that are really looking to agencies like Montpelier to sort of see what we're doing and where we can all work together to improve what is currently happening and sort of set those goals for where we all want to be. So I really appreciate that Chief could be there today to represent Montpelier, but to also represent other law enforcement in Vermont. I also want to echo part of what Rosie said. I know that the Vermont Food Bank and other agencies here in central Vermont who are really just coming together in remarkable ways to make sure that those who did not anticipate being without pay for this long are able to at least maintain some semblance of food security during a really uncertain time. I also really want to thank, and I know I came in a couple minutes late, but DPW has really been out there at it nonstop. I have been getting up really early lately, and people are out doing the streets, they're out doing the sidewalks, and that's really, that to me is what, that's why we're all here. That's why we are civil servants, and I really appreciate how much extra our city staff and our council give back to our community. And I think we all feel like we should be doing more sometimes, but I also think it's important to acknowledge when we see it. So,
Thanks. Over there, Donna or Glenn, one of you, go ahead.
Okay. I will not be at Bagito's tomorrow morning because today is Thursday. I was there this morning. And I'm managing to keep track of that, more or less. It's really been going great, and I continue to invite everyone to join me Thursday mornings, talk about this or whatever else. I've also been in touch with folks at Another Way, and I may hold future talk and listen sessions there instead of Bagito's, or in addition to trying to figure that out. The other thing I want to mention is I'm really pleased and excited about the new Public Art Commission that we have been working on, and I want to let everyone know, if you don't already know, that the application process is now open. You have until February 15th, I believe, to submit if you would like to be a commissioner on the Public Art Commission, and I think it would be great to get a lot of really strong applications. I really look forward to that appointment. So thank you, and see you soon.
I'm good. Pass.
Okay. Oh, now you're gonna make me feel bad. Okay.
You're done.
Well, no, just that the Regional Planning Commission, I'm on the TAC, and we did have 3 bridges in Montpelier, and Tom and Kurt were very helpful to me, and we got the 3 bridges to be number 2, 3, and 4 in the region. We didn't get place 1. Northfield Bridge is in worse shape. And also, GMT is going to be reducing services. They're having a board meeting on January 29th in Burlington, 7:30 in the morning. I'm not going to be back yet, so if anybody wants to go.
Wait, did you say 7:30 a.m.?
A.m. 7:30
And I'm
a.m.
sorry.
to 9:30 a.m. in the morning. Yes.
And I'm sorry, which date?
January 29th.
Wait,
Yep.
I'm sorry, that's a public hearing?
They're having a board
Oh,
meeting.
it's a board meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
And we do have a local person, Bonnie Wagoner. How do you say her name?
Waninger.
Okay.
From the regional our
planning
director, yes.
Yeah, Regional Planning Commission director. She actually got herself on the board this past year and has been a great conduit for information. And she is watching out for Central Vermont. But it does look like it is more the outreach areas and not Burlington that's being hit. So even though Next Gen has plans, some of those may be impacted. And they are, GMTA is having more public hearings in February, but they didn't have the dates yet posted. I also wanted to mention the Park Commission has been approached by the Fat Bikes. Actually, it's the same Mamba group for fat bikes. In case you don't know it, it's bikes, I guess, big tires, but they also have less air to go charging down the hill when there's snow conditions are right. So that's another one of those new issues that indeed have some conflicts with walkers and skiers, and so there'll be some meetings at the Park Commission that you may hear about. And likewise, please, cars, don't ignore the pedestrians. All that splashy, wet ice. You know, I got hit. Many people have complained to me. And pedestrians, likewise. All this water from the rain is stuck in the sidewalks. Public Works can't get it out. Please be careful, and people will have to walk on the street until it gets recovered through lots of freezing snow and then work from DPW. So the next couple of days are going to be nasty for everybody, and just share the roadways and be considerate. Thank you.
And just remember, I do have
yes, go ahead,
something.
Jack. And then
I was happened to be at the State House this morning for an event at work, and I was talking to one of the members of the House Government Ops Committee, which has a jurisdiction for our charter changes, and he said that there are already many bills introduced in the legislature to ban plastic bags, and so he's anticipating a pretty good reception for our charter change, and he knew more about that than about the non-citizen voting, but I think we're potentially looking good.
Rosie.
So I did remember, sorry,
okay.
I had chatted with Bill about this today. I had promised at one point last month, or maybe the month before, that I would write a draft of a letter to our legislators about public meeting law changes that might be useful to us. I have not gotten to that. I have been absolutely underwater at work, and I do not anticipate getting to that. So I am putting that out there. If somebody else wants to write that, or work with Bill on that, or if it's not important, we can drop it as well. But I can't do that at this point. So.
Thank you.
Just solidifying your reputation as a slacker.
I
huh?
know, such a slacker.
Oh, and I forgot the evaluations.
Oh,
Should
yeah.
we
did
do
you
that?
wanna come- Well, before we leave this,
Okay.
was there anybody else that wants to pick up writing that? If not, that's fine, but.
What were you writing about, the open meeting laws?
So we wanted to suggest to the legislature that we would benefit from being able to have some kind of public electronic message board where we could have some preliminary discussions in a public setting but online, where the public could read them and see them, and that might save some time in our meetings and actually be more accessible, because people could easily see what we'd said rather than having to tune in or watch a video recording or that kind of thing. So just suggesting to the legislature that that would be a change that we would like to see to public meeting law.
If somebody's willing to do it with me, I can definitely commit to like a set amount of time with someone. I just can't guarantee that I'm going to get it all done.
We can do it. Staff can do it.
I
If
guess
that's something the council is a legislative
I'm personally questioning it because I have a very hard time with those kind of things myself. And so if I can't or choose not to participate in that, that's supplementing meetings? It's not separate standing?
Oh, yeah. It would be in addition to meetings.
Yeah, I have trouble with those, but go ahead.
Well, maybe that's something we can talk about.
Maybe we should talk about.
As an item at some point?
Sure. So I guess one option is to direct city staff to do something like that. If we're going to do that, maybe we make it an agenda item for next time, so we can hear Donna's concern and discuss what we're telling them to do.
And see what we think all together as a council, and go from there.
Okay.
Okay. Does that sound reasonable, Donna?
Yeah, it makes me think of Google Drive. Some of the committees try to use that, but it's really not open to public access. And
Well, we'd have to, I'm not advocating for or against it, but we'd have to deal with the tech, it would have to be open. But I think it probably does make more sense to have it on an agenda if it's for the council to determine that it's a legislative priority and hear from the public for pro and con. And
I think it's a really interesting topic. I would love to talk more about, particularly Google Drive, actually. Just putting that out there. Yes.
I think it's just also another way for people to engage in a different format, because sometimes, sitting down and watching is challenging, catching snippets is challenging, and, for some people it's a really just convenient way, like you're at work, you have a thought, there it is. It's at least saved. You can go back and look at it. It's a different market, different audience.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay, for some future discussion. Was there any, you had a thing, yes.
I just, I wanted to get this out there because I'm going to be gone for the next couple of weeks. And whether or not we do it, but I know you had a deadline on bills, which I did very begrudgingly with a little bit of time I've had left. So, but I wanted this out there, and if you want to amend it, or if other people, I didn't get any comments except from Ann, and I incorporated yours.
Okay, thanks.
And so use it or modify it, but if you'd like us to do our own self-evaluation around this same time, then
And
there it is.
You sent this around via email, is that right?
Well, I did this revision today, right before the
okay.
meeting.
So if you send me the digital version of this.
You got
did.
it.
You got it.
Oh, I've
It's in
got
your
it, okay.
mailbox.
Okay, great. Well, very good then.
So then you
So
can-
yeah, I'll recirculate it, I guess.
Okay, no, I guess send it to everybody, so you could say, yes, let's just use it and
Okay.
see if it works,
And-
and if it doesn't, then.
Great, and maybe have the same deadline, trying to get it done by the 31st. Does that sound reasonable to others? I mean, that's a fair bit of time, so. Okay, great. And,
Do we want to set a date for?
well, yeah, that was actually gonna be my
Okay,
thing,
never
unless
mind.
any other
Go.
council members have. I mean, I don't mean to
No, no,
steal
no.
it, I'm sure you're probably gonna say it too.
Nope,
So,
I wasn't.
I wanted to remind people to make sure to fill out the evaluation. Jamie is gonna compile, all those, results. And we need a date to talk about them, together with Bill, so, if, I figured now would be a good time to find a date to do that. One hypothesis is that we could pick, a Wednesday that we're not meeting. For example, February 6th. I don't know if that works for people, but no?
No, but the 20th would. Or the,
The
Is that the-
20th
for the-
of February?
yeah.
How does, well, so,
That's a long ways off.
it is a long ways off, but it's not necessarily bad to hold that for us as well, because this is also a contract negotiation year, and so, well, I mean, one possibility is that we can do both the evaluation and the contract stuff together in one night. Another possibility is that it might just be easier to separate them, but,
Can you clarify, not the city manager's contract, the additional contracts are all
no,
the city manager's
the
contract
city manager's
on the
contracts.
same night as the evaluation?
Right, like we could do the city manager's evaluation and contract together on the same night, or we can try to separate them. Bill, I'm curious for your thoughts on this. My inclination is to actually separate them, just so that,
We've done it both ways in the past.
okay.
but-
So, but if you all have opinions on that,
I'm inclined to separate them too.
okay.
I'm free on the 20th.
You're free on the 20th. So let's at least book ourselves for the 20th on 6:30. Do we want to pick a different day? You said the 6th doesn't work for you. Before you go, the only other constraint that I think we need to have is that we should be doing this before town meeting day. So,
both of those
actually-
are tentative trial dates, and sometimes.
Who knows what happens?
Yes.
Okay.
So I will put it on my calendar.
Okay.
Outlook, relatively good. I'll be there, but if I have to stay, I have to stay.
Okay.
If we bump it later because it's less stuff?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be
Because
6:30.
I mean, I don't
7
know.
o'clock or
I've
8
ended up
o'clock?
like waiting until like 11:30 at the courthouse for a jury to come back. So it,
Wow.
you
never know.
You just can't tell. Sometimes it's super quick. Other
So
times
this-
it's.
So is it 6:30 then is the one we're going to have, and then you'll let us know whether it still works
Yeah,
for
I
you?
can. I mean, I'll have my phone. Usually,
Was that 6th then 20th? Or just
as long
the
as the
20th?
jury's charged by like 4:30.
Not the 6th, just the 20th. So far, anyway. Well, we can try for another.
Is there any date before the 20th?
But
Just in case we need something after those two before town meeting day?
So you're referring to two. So I
I thought, Glenn and
Yeah,
Ann said
yeah,
they
having
wanted two
two
meetings.
separate
No, I know, but
Okay.
we only have one day so far.
Right, that's correct.
Yeah,
we're trying to
so
find the
I'm
second.
saying, if we want to, I'd rather have another one before the 20th,
Right, exactly.
so we're not waiting too late.
So I'm just gone the 5th through the 7th. Other than that, I'm pretty open.
Oh, okay.
What if, I mean, the 4th?
I could do the 4th.
I'm not back yet.
When are you back?
6th. I'm back the 6th.
The 7th.
And she's back the 7th.
Are you back during the day the 7th? Like, could you do an evening meeting on the 7th?
I think so, yeah.
Works for me.
Is that,
Yep.
everybody's
Works
shaking
for
their
me, yeah.
heads? Yeah,
Yeah.
7th? Okay, well, let's, 6:30, okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's tentatively plan on the 7th at 6:30. And I would like to be potentially, like, depending on how the time goes, potentially starting to talk about contract stuff then, but let's reserve the 20th if we don't get to it.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, that's it for me. Jill.
Just real quick, if any council members didn't get to sign these liquor license apps, the liquor board gets a little finicky if everybody doesn't sign.
I don't have anything particularly exciting, although I will note, we talked about the federal shutdown and just say that has hampered our trying to process through our loans and grants for the water resource recovery facility, and some of those are through federal agencies. And so that has stalled. So there are effects beyond, obviously the out of work, well, actually they're not even out of work, the workers who are having to work and not be paid, so they can't seek another job. But there are secondary impacts to trying to get things moving. So that's happening. We received today an Act 250 recess order, which gave us it was the follow-up from last week's Act 250 hearing outlining everything that needs to be done. That is faster than we expected it, so that's great. Means that the due date for everything to come in is February 25, which is about the time we'd asked to recess the meeting to anyway to get everything in order. So that's great, keeps us right on track. And then a response date of March 12. So that was good news. We also, as we know, received the jurisdictional opinion yesterday about whether the full thing should be in Act 250 or just pieces. So that's good news, and we are trying to work out some details about TIF, and so that's all that. So a lot of things happening on a lot of fronts, but I'm glad we got the budget done and the ballot set, and on to whatever comes next.
Great. So I think that's everything. So without objection, we're going to consider the meeting adjourned. Wow, record
Good
time.
work, everybody. Wow. 9:08.